Farmers have known the secret of cover crops for decades, but they can also be used for home gardens. Cover crops are a great way to prevent weeds from coming in. It's early August and the weeds are flowering, they're seeding. They're going to be wanting to find a home for winter. And if you leave a bare bed of beautiful soil, they're going to find their home there. So we plant the cover crop seeds to, number one, provide coverage to prevent erosion and also to enrich the soil. In this handful of soil, there are literally millions of organisms, and they're hungry. They need organic matter to keep alive. The organisms also help to convert some of the chemicals in your soil, the phosphorus, nitrogen, potassium, into usable forms for the plants. So by feeding the organisms, we're helping to enrich the soil. The cover crop seed that we're going to be using today is called a fall cover crop. And it contains some oats, some phylacea, several types of peas, and some tillage radishes. All of those plants will grow until frost, and then they'll die and leave organic matter for the organisms to munch on during early spring. Also, the radish and some of the other plants that we have are known as legumes, and they actually fix nitrogen to the root of the plant. This, for instance, is a spent clover plant that I had in my garden, and you can see the little nodule, a little bundle of nitrogen that's there waiting until the temperatures and the moisture levels are good, and then it will slowly release the nitrogen. For our cover crops, this happens to be when the soil temperatures reach about 55 degrees. And that's when it's recommended that you plant your garden. So you get a slow release of nitrogen right as you plant the seed and the plants need the nutrients. This is called a radish corpse. And this was left over from last year. As the plant continues to decompose in the soil, it leaves this little corpse, they call it, and it's almost like a sphagnum peat. And again, this is nutrients for the microorganisms in the soil. There are two types of cover crop seed that we offer for home vegetable gardens. There's the fall cover crop list that contains Austrian winter pea, iron clay crow pea, oats, flax, phylacea, jackhammer radish, and millet. This particular group of seeds will be winter killed probably sometime around January when the temperatures are sustained several days below freezing. There's another mix that can be used called the spring cover crop, and it contains some seed that includes clover that will not be winter killed. And you'll need to either cut it down or till it into the soil. Personally, I like the fall cover crop mix because it leaves a lot of residue. And in the spring, we can just come out, dig among the residue, plant our plants or seeds, and leave the dead plant material as a mulch. So it serves a double purpose. To review how to prepare your seed, you'll open it and place it in another bag or container. I'm just going to use a Ziploc bag. Your bag will contain an inoculant, and that's a bacteria that helps to facilitate the fixation of nitrogen on the roots of the plants, of the legume plants. Then we're going to mist the seed, not really wet it, just mist it so that there's moisture. And we'll shake it up a little bit. And we're doing this so that the inoculant adheres to the seed. And we'll open it up. That's interesting because we get our seed from the Walnut Creek Seed Company located on the Brant Farm in Carroll, Ohio. And they come up with different mixes depending on your crop. For vegetable crops, we use the fall and spring cover crop seed mix. But if you're growing a specialty crop, corn, soybean, whatever, they'll actually work with you to assess your soil and come up with the correct seed mix. For instance, if you're low in potassium, they may include buckwheat into your mix. And the inoculants are also seed specific. So we'll put the inoculant into the bag. You can see it's kind of a black powder. Seal it again, and then mix it again. This plastic bag shows how the coating is spread over all the seed. Now that we have our seed prepared, we have the challenge of how we're going to spread it in a bed that looks pretty full at this point. Well, you can still benefit by harvesting your vegetables by doing a little bit of pruning and soil preparation. I'm going to demonstrate that now. We're going to take some of the lower branches of these tomato plants and prune them. We can also tie some of them up or weave them back into the cage. And in this way, we'll be clearing the ground under the plants, and we'll be able to kind of dig up the soil and plant the seed. As you can see, pruning up some of the tomato plants does involve some sacrifice. I found some fruit that was hiding in beneath all the foliage. You'll also notice that I picked some green fruit, and that's where the sacrifice comes in. I'll take the green tomatoes, wrap them in newspaper, put them in a paper bag in a cool, dry place, and within about 10 days, they'll ripen up. The fruit that's partially ripened, I'll just put on a sunny windowsill, and within a couple days, it'll be nice and red. In preparing the soil, I use an angle chop with my trowel. This is almost like slit seeding the seed. Oh, look, found an onion. And then I'll chop up the clods so that they're nice and smooth. I did remove any of the tomato foliage that was left because you'll see signs of late blight on your tomatoes. Some people mistakenly think that this late blight is a lack of water because late summer it tends to be dry. But if you notice, if you water your plants at least a ½ inch a week, normally it's an inch a week during the growing season, but by late summer I'm cutting back on the watering. And I use a rain gauge to actually measure how much water I'm putting on the plants. Any dryness that you see will not be due to drought. These circles here, brown circles, are an indication of late blight. We also have some bacterial wilt coming on. And the best way to control it, unless you use a fungicide, herbicide spray throughout the year, is to simply remove this foliage and dispose of it. Some good intended gardeners may is to overwater their plants this time of year. What that will do is spread the spores if you do have early blight or the bacteria, and it will also change the flavor of your tomatoes. drying out of the plants towards late summer, early fall actually sweetens the tomatoes. And that's why we want to only water once if it doesn't rain, and only a ½ inch. I recommend disposing of the foliage that I removed. Do not compost it because it probably does contain bacteria. And unless you have some hungry squirrels and chipmunks, you should also pick up the tomatoes because under the plants and on the ground, because they will resprout next year. Okay, now we're going to spread our cover crop seed. 1 bag of cover crop seed is enough to cover 200 square feet. That's about a 10 by 20 foot planting area. This is 4 foot by 8 feet, so we only have 32 square feet. So you see, this is plenty enough seed to plant our planter here. And I'm just going to hand distribute the seed in and under the plants. By removing some of the bottom foliage, you're enabling the seed to get more light, but as I said, it's sort of a sacrifice. You want to leave enough foliage to cover your tomato fruit so that they don't get sunburned. This process will continue throughout September. I'll be coming out, cutting out branches that aren't productive so that I can give more light to the seed. I'll also be removing diseased foliage so that it doesn't spread throughout the plant. You'll notice the density of the seed that I put down. You want to have good seed soil contact, and then I will be covering it with sphagnum peat moss. The peat moss will provide some stabilization for the pH. It'll neutralize it. So I'll spread enough peat moss to lightly cover the seed. I would say about 1/8 of an inch. After I spread the peat moss, I'm going to gently mist the surface of the soil. The peat moss was dry and dusty. You'll notice I'm trying to keep the water off the foliage of the plants because here again, I don't want to spread any spores of fungus or bacteria. But I want to totally soak the peat moss. Peat moss will repel water until it's saturated. As I'm watering, the seed starts to surface. Some of the seed starts to surface. So after I complete the watering, I'm going to go back again and add more peat moss and then water again. After we complete that process, we're finished. We let nature take its course. Within 10 days, I'll see some seed sprouting. And again, I'll come back in and continue to cut some branches from the tomato plants to afford more light for the sprouting seed. When I determine I'm done harvesting the tomatoes, I'll simply cut them to the ground. I won't pull them out because that'll disturb some of the cover plants. But rather I'll leave the root in the ground. And then the cover plants will take over. We'll be updating this video with shots of the plants as they emerge, so come back and see us. We'll have some updated videos to show you how it progresses throughout the year, and then next spring, how we go about planting. Thanks for watching our video.